I used to believe my father's goodbye broke me. I carried that belief for years, like a shadow I couldn't shake, like a weight I had to bear alone. I thought the absence left in its wake was permanent, irreparable, defining every choice I would ever make. But over time, I began to understand something I hadn't before. The goodbye didn't break me, it shaped me. It carved spaces in my life I never asked for but needed. Spaces where resilience could grow, where empathy could take root, where courage could flourish in unexpected ways. I learned that life doesn't always give us the childhoods we hope for, the families we dream about, or the explanations we crave. But it does give us choices in how we respond, in how we carry the pain, in how we allow the absence to influence or guide us. Healing, I realized, wasn't about erasing the past. It wasn't about pretending the goodbye never happened, or convincing myself that the emptiness didn't exist. Healing was about rewriting the meaning of that moment, about deciding that growth, not bitterness, would define the path forward, about understanding that strength isn't built in silence, it is built in confronting what we've been denied and turning it into something meaningful. Over time, I began to see the lessons embedded in his departure, small, quiet lessons that unfolded slowly, revealing truths about love, resilience, and the human heart. The first lesson was clear: a single goodbye can shape you, but it doesn't have to define you. Yes, absence leaves a mark. Yes, silence echoes in ways you cannot ignore. But that mark can become a map rather than a chain. It can guide you toward understanding, toward empathy, toward self-discovery. It can teach you how to carry grief without letting it become your identity. The second lesson is equally important. Silence in families is powerful, breaking it is even more powerful. For so long, believed silence was safer, more protective. But I learned that silence keeps pain bottled, perpetuates misunderstanding, and limits connection. When we dare to speak, to ask questions, to confront absence, we reclaim pieces of ourselves that were lost in the quiet. We allow healing to begin not just in the spaces around us, but in the spaces within us. The third lesson is perhaps the hardest. Healing often begins when you stop waiting for someone to return and start returning to yourself. We spend years hoping for reconciliation, for explanation, for presence that may never come. And in that waiting, we miss the opportunity to nurture the person we are right now. To recognize that our own growth, our own love, and our own peace are not dependent on anyone else's choices. Returning to yourself means acknowledging the absence without letting it control you. It means learning to provide your own emotional support, to give yourself permission to feel, and to create the life you want even when the life you had was disrupted. I discovered that returning to myself didn't happen overnight. It was a process of patient observation, of gentle self-reflection, of embracing the discomfort that comes with facing unresolved emotions. It required courage to sit with the pain, to acknowledge the anger, the sadness, the confusion. It required humility to admit that I had carried blame that wasn't mine, that I had internalized a departure that had nothing to do with my worth. It required strength to forgive not necessarily him, not necessarily others, but to forgive the circumstances and release their hold over my life. Over the years, I began to notice subtle transformations. I could connect more deeply with others. I could show empathy without fear. I could embrace joy without guilt. I realized that my father's goodbye, while painful, had taught me lessons no other experience could. It had given me the capacity to recognize emotional absence in others and approach it with compassion rather than resentment. It had shown me how to be present in ways my father could not, how to break generational patterns rather than repeat them. It had taught me that strength is not about control or suppression, but about understanding, patience, and resilience. I began to see my life as a series of choices, not as a consequence of someone else's departure. I could allow his absence to define me, or I could allow it to guide me towards self-awareness, emotional maturity, and growth. Choosing the latter became my quiet rebellion, my act of self-preservation, and ultimately, a path to healing. I started to notice that this understanding didn't just affect me, it affected those around me. I became more attentive to relationships, more willing to communicate openly, more mindful of how absence and silence impact the people I love. It is strange how the absence of one person can illuminate the presence of many others in your life, making you appreciate connection more profoundly than you ever did before. I learned that healing is not a destination but a lifelong journey. It is a series of small, intentional decisions to confront, to forgive, to nurture, and to grow. Every step forward is a victory. Every act of self-compassion is proof of resilience. Every moment of connection is a reclamation of what was once lost. And though I may never fully understand my father's choices, I understand myself better because of them. I understand the depth of human emotion, the fragility of family, and the enduring power of love, even when it is imperfect, incomplete, or absent. We all carry stories shaped by someone else's choices. The question isn't why they left, it's what we choose to build afterward. We cannot control the past, but we can shape our response to it. We cannot undo absence, but we can reclaim our presence in the world. We cannot change the choices of others, but we can honor our own capacity for healing. If this story resonates with you, let it be a reminder: your healing matters. Your voice matters. Your story deserves to be heard. You have the right to reclaim the pieces of yourself that were lost or hidden. You have the right to turn absence into growth, silence into understanding, and pain into wisdom. You have the right to write your own story, on your own terms, guided by your choices, rather than someone else's. This is my healing story, and perhaps a piece of your own. And if nothing else, I hope it reminds you that even in the quietest goodbyes, the deepest absences, and the longest silences, there is potential for transformation. There is room for strength. There is space for resilience. There is a path toward peace. Healing is possible. Growth is possible. Love, true, guarded, human love is always possible.